Hi guys, I'm Ashley Schafer. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about transitioning a horse from Futurity to Rodeo. I don't rodeo a ton myself, but one of my biggest goals when I start a horse is to see them go on to win at rodeos. I love to train and I love to Futurity them, and then I love to see them go on and win with their next rider. So it's always something that's in the back of my head when I'm training one. Like, is this going to be a good rodeo horse, and what kind of rider is going to need to fit this horse, and those kinds of things. So a few of the things that I find really important for a horse to go on to be a rodeo horse is that they use themselves really well, for one, because the ground conditions are not always up to par. And I feel like if a horse is very, kind of kamikaze and just runs in there and then just like throws itself into a turn or however, that it's not going to be able to stand up on bad ground, okay? I think those kinds of styles can be really fast and we can win a lot on them as Futurity horses, but then they really struggle later on, trashy ground. We're very spoiled at the Futurities. They really cater to us and we get to run on really good ground conditions. They drag every 5, they big drag every 50. If the ground isn't good, they'll stop it a lot of times. Sometimes they'll stop it and fix it. It's not that way at rodeos, so I'm always trying to be mindful of that when I'm training mine, and I really want them to use themselves in the best way possible. So I feel like if a horse is 4-wheel drive and really keeps everything engaged and stays pretty square under me, that they can stand up on almost anything. Okay, so I'm always working on making sure that they're not like, falling into their turns or falling out of their turns. Like I want to feel like they're right between my hands and legs. So that's something I find important. The other thing is just, obviously, like anything else, in order to get them ready for the Futurities, we have to haul them a lot anyway, but hauling them and exposing them as much as possible. I think some people, there's a lot of controversy, I guess, about whether Futurities are good or if you should do that before you rodeo one. I think it's one of the best ways to get a horse ready for rodeos. I think if it's done right, just like anything else, if it's done right, being a Futurity horse is a great positive thing for a horse to go on to be a rodeo horse, because they've already had the pressure and they've already been trained through it. My horses usually by the end of the year are really confident and have really learned how to handle pressure. So they can go on to be rodeo horses usually kind of right away. I had Famed French Kiss, which is a full sister to Freckles to Fame. And in November of her 4-year-old year, she had won about 60,000 already as a Futurity horse. She was a great mare. She placed almost everywhere she went. Just like he himself, Freckles to Fame, he was a great Futurity horse too. And he still wins at rodeos with Shaylee Lord. I got to run him at the ERA rodeos and he did really well. Brittany Posey ran him at the NFR this last year. And she had rode him, I think ran him once before it and did really well on him. So, that's my goal. Like, I love that. But Famed French Kiss, when I got to the ERA finals in November, Can Man was hurt, and my other mare that I planned on running there, KR Last Fling, she was hurt as well. So the only horse I had left was Sissy, and she was a 4-year-old. So I ran her at the ERA finals, and it was loud and it was crazy, and it was her first rodeo, and she did awesome. She ran the second fastest time of the week. She was so good, and it didn't frazzle her at all. There's people that would think that was crazy to run a 4-year-old in an event like that, but I knew she could handle it or I wouldn't have done it to her. Another thing I think is really important with that being said, though, is knowing your horse and what they can handle and what they can't. So the other thing I'm always trying to be mindful of when I'm training these horses and when I'm taking them to the Futurities is which ones I think can handle the pressure of rodeos or the atmosphere and all that. KR Last Fling, for example, is a great mare that I Futurity'd in 2015, and I still run her now. And I just take her where she can shine, and I did buy my card and I tried taking her to a few rodeos, and it's just not really her cup of tea. She could be seasoned to it, but it would take a long time and a lot of runs, and it's just not really, She has a limited number of runs in her anyway because she has navicular, so it's very hard for me to want to take her and season her to rodeo. You know, I can't run her on bad ground, and so for her, I'm just going to take her where I know she can shine. I'll take her to big money barrel races. I took her to the BBR finals a couple weeks ago. I'll just take her to sweepstakes, things where I know she can shine and win the most money for her career, you know. Famed French Kiss, on the other hand, I knew pretty early on that that horse was going to be a rodeo horse. One, she uses herself really well. She just has the right mentality for it. You know, it's almost like the louder the crowd and the crazier the atmosphere, the more she thrives off of it. She runs harder, she turns harder, the whole thing is really good for her. Freckles to Fame was the same way. You know, you take him to a jackpot where there's a bunch of entries, but there's no loud music, there's no crowd, and he goes out there and works every time, but he might not necessarily fire. He just kind of goes out there and makes a nice run. But you take him to a rodeo where the crowd is loud and the atmosphere is crazy, and you can feel it in him. It's like he was born to do it. He loves it. So I think it's important to just know your horse and know kind of which ones are going to do it and which ones aren't. And like I said, it's not that they can't be seasoned to it, but I think there's horses that thrive in that atmosphere, and there's horses that really thrive in a different atmosphere. So for me, as a Futurity trainer, when I'm trying to place these horses later, that's something I really try to keep in mind. And I try to find the right fit for them, because it's best for us if they go on to win, because that's, you know, obviously good for our business. I want these horses to win. When they leave my house, whoever buys them, you know, I want them to keep me updated. If they need help, I'll help them. You know, I want those horses to win. It's what I do this for.